Hallo miteinander, I'm Geschichte6 and this is Touhou Gouyoku Ibun. Last time we sparred with an ogre, a pirate and a chicken. Also we will be prepared to take on the reigning champion. Stage 4 of Flandre's hardest path is special in that we're already going where other campaigns conclude, the Sea of Petroleum. Whereas the others will encounter Totetsu here, we will have to be a little more patient and first earn the right to face them from someone else. The underground oil field is the cause of Touhou 17.5's incident. Rumors about it make up the game's premise. And where there's an incident, Reimu Hakure can't be far. Her campaign in this game actually ends very unsatisfyingly. She just gets ejected from Totetsu's domain. Adding insult to injury, Flandre is about to wrestle the role of protagonist from the Shrine Maiden. Zun really does his main girl of Touhou dirty this time, for some reason. Reimu can also be fought on Flandre's medium route. About what's up with the multiple routes. Each one leads to a different ending. We are aiming for the best, although I wouldn't call the other two bad, just less conclusive. I also should reveal, rather now than later, that we are cutting the ending epilogue in respect to Zun's policies. All that's assuming, of course, we even win. Let's not count our Kutaka before she's even hatched. We've got a rival to dominate. Reimu moves around swiftly and prefers to use focused attacks on us rather than chaotic screen-filling Danmaku. The first phase is a nameless non-spell, and while those are always pretty basic, it's not possible to deduct emblems on them or make the boss helpless. Already we're past it, and the rhythm of the battle becomes more hectic. After all, this spell card is called Spirit Sign Extraordinarily Absurd Indiscriminate Exorcism. It was absurdly futile to use against Flandre. The third and final spell is special in that it's exclusive to this very encounter. The yin-yang orbs will burst upon crashing into the petroleum, sending up hazardous bubbles. Usually, you'll be fighting Reimu in a forest, where she will still use the orbs, yet they won't react to the environment in that way. Reimu has been defeated, and with relative ease. Honestly, she's the weakest opponent among those we have fought, which is questionable from a design standpoint. I think the real purpose of this duel was to move the plot forward. We learn that Totetsu can absorb anything, which made her undefeatable for anyone so far. However, Flandre might be the natural predator to that power. It's the conundrum of what wins when an unstoppable force hits an immovable object. And it's probably what Okina was banking on since the very start. We move deeper into the Sea of Petroleum until we finally track down the big bad. Yuma Totetsu is the matriarch of the Gouyoku Alliance, an authority that Touhou 17 heavily hinted at without ever calling by name. Her species is referred to as a Taoti, a beast yokai with traits of sheep and rams, as well as an unstoppable appetite. From what I understand, she loves to gobble up raw petroleum from her spork. Yummy! I imagine she and Yoshika would become foodie friends. What I find interesting about Totetsu's design is that she actually looks adequately monstrous. I don't think she would have had such scary fangs if Zun had done the art of this game. I bet she would have been blessed with a typical dumpling face. Someone of Totetsu's cruelty and arrogance has no problem accepting Flandre's challenge. she is the final opponent of everyone's campaign. The main gimmick here is that the petroleum is creatively used against us, whether by Totetsu splashing it around, surfing on it, or causing tidal waves. If I told you that Totetsu isn't playable, it would be the truth, for the moment. Supposedly, a content patch is planned to release simultaneously with the Switch port of Touhou 17.5. One rumor I keep hearing is that the Taoti will have her own story mode. I'd welcome that. One thing that often gets me in this fight is that because of all the weaponized petroleum flying around, I forget that Totetsu's spork is a melee weapon that she occasionally slams down. It may look all kinds of goofy, but it's a potent armament, unblockable and undashable as well. I do think this is an exciting and well-designed fight. We are now at the third phase. Nameless as it may be, it's still one of the more complex ones our foe has in store. It's much trickier than her next, forcible and immature distillation device. Immature is thinking this predictable pattern where Totetsu barely moves around would be even remotely effective. Deducting emblems on it is a cakewalk, so long as you recall that you have an upward strike. By the way, Flandre's fist-clenching spell card is arguably the best way of dealing damage in the game, especially on prone targets. One thing it can't ever do is deduct emblems. That's understandable, because if it could, it would be horrendously, stupidly overpowered. A good decision. It's amazing enough as it is. We've arrived at the final spell card, and it's extraordinary in that you're constantly being sucked towards the boss. Contact with Totetsu means damage here, so we must fight the pull while avoiding all the icky sticky oil that's also getting inhaled. The pattern is interrupted every few cycles by Totetsu bursting out of the center, but that probably makes it easier. And now we're dealing the big numbers. Spamming our spell card after a spell break is so satisfying, yet it wasn't quite enough. At this point, I was hell-bent on recklessly smuggling in that last bit of damage we needed. It worked out beautifully. We won! But Totetsu hasn't exploded. Moreover, Okina returns after a suspicious absence. Oh, she promises to power us up. Great, a Deus Ex Machina is just what we needed. But wait, fancy effects surround Totetsu, not Flandre. Oh boy, in a crazy, almost random twist, Mall Center Okina has pushed us off her lap and betrayed us. Welcome to the true form of the Sea of Petroleum. It's reddened with blood and has demonic hands splashing out of it. Those are the best visual effects of this game, in my opinion. We have at least been fully healed and checkpointed. Essentially, the duel with an empowered Totetsu is a new stage. A stage that Reimu's and Marissa's campaigns don't even reach. That's for the better, as it's brutal in difficulty. Blood drawing, Blood of Gaia is still the most harmless part of it, so long as you don't underestimate the homing blood bubbles. The reason why the Sea of Petroleum was unmasked as a bloody hellscape has something to do with science, believe it or not. From how I understand it, petroleum forms through the fossilization of biomass. I warn you not to quote me on that trivia, I am not a geologist. Nevertheless, that somewhat backs the game's explanation of why the souls of countless deceased are trapped in petroleum and in Totetsu's grasp. Refinement Recollection of Cursed Blood is a spell card I've had massive trouble with in the past. The ground becomes a hazard during it. We must platform from bubble to bubble to stay safe. It's not as bad for Flandre, but in some other campaigns I would take frustrating amounts of damage from it. Still, it's just the warm-up for this next infamous spell card. You'll be able to count 10 protective emblems in the top right. Nothing in the game has more. During Dinner of Totetsu, the avaricious beast god, the floor pushes us away from our opponent, while eruptions travel towards us. The best approach in my experience is to hop over the first 2 blasts, then stay in the air until Totetsu's circle turns red. Hopping is something Flandre can do. I'm emphasizing that because half the characters cannot. Everyone can dash upwards, but that's not at all the same. I've mentioned that Murasa is very unpleasant to play as. Handling this spell card as her is pure agony. Not only does the Buddhist captain move as quickly as a classic Belmont, but only having inflexible anchor dashes instead of a dedicated jump button makes a world of difference. You hear people say about Touhou 17.5 that half of all players will give up on Dinner of Totetsu as Murasa. Those who hold on will usually beat the rest of the game. I barely recall how I did it myself. I would get hit on almost every cycle of the pattern, yet eke out what felt like a fluke of a victory. As Mighty Flandre, this is very challenging, but still perfectly reasonable, as we've just proven. Under any other circumstances, the game would end here. We must survive through one more obstacle, completely exclusive to Flandre's hardest route. Totetsu shows us a new, even more monstrous side of herself. It reminds me of Yoshi's Island's Bowser battle, where he would approach from the background. For only this showdown, Flandre learns a brand new ability. Instead of our spell card, we can now absorb fluid like the rest of the cast. We must cancel out as many blood droplets as we can and absorb the resulting blood until we reach a 100% charge. If we keep charging more, a forbidden fruit will be created and launched at Totetsu. Bam! 1/3 of her health is gone. The most important thing to know about this gimmick is that if you're interrupted by damage while forming the fruit, you lose your full charge without launching it. Be sure to take a secure position before you go on the attack. Every successful hit evolves the pattern here, adding bigger bubbles and even a lasting blood spray on the final hit. Totetsu may be the incarnation of greed and gluttony, but even she, who slurps up fossil fuels, can't handle the forbidden fruit. That should crown our young mistress as the universe's worst cook. Don't let her trap you into trying her cranberries. Victory! As announced, we're skipping the epilogue scene, but we're keeping the staff role intact so that we can have a short review and closing thoughts. Touhou 17.5 has broken the mold a little by being a fighting game without a multiplayer mode. Some folks may be disappointed by that, but I don't mind much. If Tasofro wanted to focus on the single-player experience, that's a respectable decision, and I'd say that experience was a fine one. Due to the player's low health pool, you have to take the patterns very seriously. Smaller mistakes matter much more than, for example, in Scarlet Weather Rhapsody, where the occasional chip damage can be taken for granted. We only played on normal difficulty, but even that was no joke. I've never felt the need to dial it up from there, and I'd still argue this is Tasofro's hardest title since Megamari. Some cheapness contributes to that. Bullets aren't unlikely to spawn practically inside of you. Yet overall, I really like Touhou 17.5, especially for its uniqueness in playable characters. And while I mourn that not the whole cast had campaigns, those that did had one for a reason, not for the sake of having one. With that, Geschichte this was Touhou Gouyoku Ibun. Bis bald!